Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, whatever time you're watching this. My name is Corbin, and you are in tune to Nation Watch on November 16th, 2025. We're glad to have you here. We've been off for a few weeks, but we are back nonetheless, and we are ready to discuss all that has occurred for that time. Today, we have with us a guest that is no stranger to Nation Watch, and I'm sure he's no stranger to you. And considering the issue that we're going to be touching today, I think he would be most appropriate guest. And the guest I have today is none other than Mr. Paul Williams, who has served as a senior officer up to the rank of deputy commissioner in the Guyana police force. He is accomplished. He holds a degree. He holds a master's and probably, many other qualifications along with a long line of experiencing in the Guyana police force and national security. Good day, Mr. Williams. We're glad to have you here today. Now, as you would know, and by now most of the Guyanese population would have known, on October 26th, they had something that really, I think, shaked up the country and has caused and sparked a lot of concern and in some cases even outrage as to what is really happening in Guyana. And I'm referring to the bombing at the mobile gas station on Regent and King Street on the 26th of October 2025, resulting in the loss of life of a 6-year-old girl and several injuries to other persons. Now, as we would know, as the information placed in the public sphere, is that the incident or the bombing was as a result of the actions of a foreign national, and we're told that he's Venezuelan. More so, recently there have been 7 persons who've been brought before the courts in relation to this particular incident, and out of those persons, 4 are Guyanese, or I believe 4 are Venezuelans, and the other balance, or 3 rather, they are Guyanese citizens. So considering this, I think, it would be very appropriate for us to really get into this and hear from somebody who has, experience such as yours in relation to national security and policing. And the first question I want to ask to you, or put to you rather, is, could you tell us what was your first reaction when you heard this news from a policing perspective? What were some of the thoughts running through your mind at first?
I must say, good morning. Thank you for having me on this program. And thanks to our listening audience. As it relates to the situation with the bombing, when I heard about it, I was totally, concerned to see that the level of terrorism that is happening in our country, because that is not the first incident. There were 2 other incidents. They had one at the East Repentance outpost, and then they had one at the GPL installation. And then following that, and I think even from the first one, we should have been in a position to prevent any other flowing thereafter. So it is very concerning, and I think we all as Guyanese need to be concerned. The thing is that persons were arrested, and we would not go much in depth with this matter because
it's still being
investigated and gain the attention of the court. But despite persons were arrested and thing, is that from a legal perspective, arrest is not about all, but we want to ensure that there's a successful prosecution, because this requires a strong message to the public at large, and even if there's any external influence into this type of activities in our country, which is very startling. So what is important, I would really like to see how the police is intend to prove the case and to ensure that we have a successful prosecution in this matter. So that of itself will also help to bring a greater degree of satisfaction to our people and even those who are visiting.
Now, you would have mentioned this is not the first occurrence. Now, and we'll be very careful moving forward because we don't want to get too much into the investigation. But from the point of a normal citizen, do you think that it would be too far-fetched for someone to possibly say that these series of bombings, which is not something that is usual in Guyana, because that's the first thing we in Guyana, our crime situation is never really down the line of bombings and these things. We have more violent crimes and your petty crimes and those kind of things. And when we're now seeing a shift in the landscape, and I would like you to comment on that briefly. But before that, do you hold the view, or would it be wrong for the view to be held that these are not isolated incidents?
These incidents, I would not consider them being something that we are accustomed to, because the thing is that in our law, it has the offense of terrorism. And what I think is that the things that persons were previously charged with to say they're an act of terrorism, this is real terrorism. This is real terrorism. And I think this is what the judicial system needs to really, in terms of the police and, other persons, to really truly make a real distinction and to let the public know, well, look, what really terrorism is. Because when you look at it, with those persons who are protesting in terms of really want to have justice for the incidents of persons who were killed unjustifiable, in terms of Quinton Bacchus, Adriana Young, and other persons who are charged, and they say act of terrorism, but then when you actually make the comparison with the two, you understand me, I think the public need to really have a type of education as it relates to the elements or the ingredients to really truly prove or to establish the offense of terrorism. And that of itself can really truly now awaken our people and bring them to the real understanding what we're really facing with. Because, remember, the public out there, they're fractions. And when we talk, I know for sure some people will be of the view that, what those who are charged in terms of standing up for justice, they're right to be charged with terrorism. But then now some people now, on the other hand, will still want it to really truly know, with this act, in terms of setting of a bomb, explosion, caused such a massive destruction, and then compare with the act of those people, it's truly important for us to really have a distinction or comparison here. So when you look at it, this is what really truly make the differences.
Correct.
And what peculiar, the peculiarity in terms of what we're really looking for in the seriousness of it.
Correct. And I like how you alluded to what is required, because I did some reading into the law, and the section for terrorism would be section 309A, which is an amendment of the Criminal Law Offences Act, chapter 801. And at section 309A, the law sets out what I believe is a very clear understanding of what is required for an act of terrorism. And the key component, or more so the key mental component, because we both know that in crime the criminal liability, there's
Yes.
both a mental component that must be satisfied as well as a physical component where, you know, the person would have done something, which
Yes.
after the persons who don't know would be the distinction between manslaughter and murder,
Right.
whereby for murder somebody is charged based on the intent to commit that particular crime. And manslaughter, there's a lesser intent in that you did not intend for that to happen, right? But not to get in too much into the legal nuances, but when we look at section 309A, the main component of the mental element is that the law sets out that there must be a threat to national security or an intent to be able to disturb national security or the sovereignty of Guyana, which is the main component. So you have to not just show that the person would have acted in a manner, there was riotous behavior, or they were burning tires on the road, or they were even placing a bomb in a gas station. But now you have to show that the intent of that person or the perpetrator of the crime or person being accused of the crime is that their intent was to threaten the national sovereignty, the national security,
Yeah.
and the sovereignty
Yeah.
of Guyana. And I think that touches the true issue that you were mentioning earlier in relation to how the police have now, or the authorities have now been charging persons before the court of law when there is not a case where there is an absence of other proper charges that could have been laid. You could have given them riotous behavior, disturbing the peace. But I think, to allude to what you said earlier, there has been a stance adopted by the authorities that they want to send a very strong message to these types of behaviors. But when we really assess these offenses, and then we assess these particular offenses brought before the court, some of them have been dismissed and some of them are still ongoing. So we won't go into the specifics of each case, but on a general level, there is usually the absence of the intent. So the police is able, and they are able to adduce evidence showing that, okay, well, this person was present. Okay, well, this person burned a few tires, or okay, we saw this person within the vicinity, or oh, look, this is the ringleader of the day, or whatever person calling out instructions, or even persons on social media who are just calling out for persons to come out and to support the cause and to basically stand in solidarity, and they found themselves on the wrong side of the law. And in most cases, you wonder, has this person really shown an intent to threaten national security or Guyana sovereignty? And then, as you rightfully say, we have on the other side, we have this particular act which we can possibly read into it and say that, okay, yes, it is possible. And the more important thing in my mind is that when I watched the video that was circulated on social media in the few moments before the bomb was set off, or whatever the case may be, was that he wanted to place it closer to the gas tanks or to the pump stations at the gas station. But thankfully for the vigilant pump attendant at the time, she would have, turned him away, and he had to reconsider where he wanted to place the bomb. Now, what would have happened, and that's not the question, but just for conversation's sake, it leaves us to wonder, had he been able to successfully execute the plan that he meant to do? Because it was clear he didn't want to put the bag or whatever by the gas tanks, the cooking gas at the back where it was eventually put. But he wanted to put. So what would have happened had he been able to successfully execute what the plan he had? And it could have been way more detrimental. It was, I would believe, the bomb radius, because I believe the camera was from the building across the road on King Street. And you could have seen that big blast radius just for the bomb out of where it was supposed to be. Now, had that been able to go off in the actual pump station where there's the gas lines and all of that thing, it would have been a completely different situation. You understand? And what I would like to know from you is that seeing these new types of crimes arising in Guyana, do you think that the national security infrastructure that we have now, do you think that it is suffice to handle these new threats, or more, or to put it in a better way, do you see a shift in our criminal sphere moving away from what has been a violent crime society we had? Somebody might, there might be a little shootout, or there might be a robbery under arms, or there might be an assault or some other petty crimes. And now we're moving to what some people would dub as big boy crimes, people setting off bombs and these things. And we know that bombs are not just they're not just dangerous, but they're lethal, in that if a bomb is successfully placed and successfully detonated, the effect of that could cripple a country. So, do you think that the criminal landscape in Guyana is shifting?
Let me give you a background, right? For my 38 years of service, is that what I know for sure, okay? The police force and the joint services, they are SOPs and they are structured arrangement, both from individual services and collective operations, okay? And when we look in terms of the aspect of national security, I'll put it simply, means that security as it relates to infrastructure, okay, our human resource, and all other important components of this state that is responsible for our daily operations and functioning, okay? And any threat, internal or externally, okay, is what we need to guard against. And in so doing, there are some elementary aspects in terms of within the police and the joint services posture, because we have in terms of security of KPs and VPs, right? Which mean key points, vulnerable points. Even also security of VIPs, and all those things come within our focus and structure of national security. Since 2020, I've been out of the actual operation of the Guyana Police Force, but I stayed on with my service until last year when I retired, right? Where I was work at the COVID task force, then I went to Civil Defense Commission. I am not really at any time thereafter engaged within what is being conducted and happening within the police force. But I know for sure that all those systems, instructions, manuals, and everything are there. But I don't know how much the ranks are being taught, they're being refreshed, are being guided in the direction in terms of how they go about dealing with those aspects. Even prior to that, in our joint services, meeting and engagement, we had joint services, dinner nights and so on. And even right there, we will discuss issues of national security. And issues of national security doesn't only really look in terms of where they're just a bombing. We look in terms of even the design of these new shopping malls and all these things and so on. That where you need to have all the key players around the table: health, police, fire, okay? All the key persons, even the based upon which area, if it's the NDC, or if in the city, we have the town council and all these things. Because looking in terms of the design and the structure is whereby we would have even recommended that those buildings was now structured in such a way that they must have parking inside. If not under, within the land space that they have, parking must be inside. So you can able now to ease the congestion of the road. So to respond in terms of emergencies and those things, right? So those are things we look at. We were even looking at high-rising buildings that were close to our police station, the GDF installations and those places, and in terms of how they should be designed and also what are the likely threat and those type of things, right? But I don't know in terms of if there's any continuity in those things that we would have discussed, set the trend for, are being continued. But what is important? What is important? The joint services would have had numerous training. One, you remember 9/11? After 9/11, there were a lot of training. I even attended training in Jamaica and came back and was a trainer, where we were dealing in terms of looking and how to detect persons and, parcels and these things, bulky, living in, different places and all these things, because it was a very serious thing after 9/11, which created a total change in the entire world in terms of movements of persons and all these things. So we had training with them in terms of looking for, these type of explosive and all those things, and how you even train your ranks them, that how they must be vigilant and how to make observations. Then you remember also when Guyana hosted the World Cup for the first time, Cricket World Cup, right? That also brought about extensive training in terms of, looking out for these type of activities, detection, prevention, and all those things. Even in terms of how to really establish mass triage areas for mass, casualties and all these things. So numerous trainings done with our ranks and so on. But I don't know how much are being continued and how much, are being there taught at these new ranks, okay, what to expect and what to do. Because when the first incident occurred in terms of with the installation, right, the GPL installation and so on, my concern was about who are the persons that they really have there. Is it private security or is it the police, right? Special constabulary. Who are the persons we know? I coming up recognize that they were the persons who were placed there. They really guard these government and public installations and so on. But I've seen a total change in terms of private securities. How much they have trained, how much they know what to look for, how much they're capable of making detection, how many visits are being done to ensure that they're alert and vigilant, in terms of looking out for these things. So there are so many things change, and as things change, persons out there, you have like trained people who have retired, trained people who have absconded, trained people who have completed their service out there, and they can be walking around and making all these observations and seeing, you understand me, loopholes and opportunity to do these things. Okay, let me say, like for instance, with the incident with the three bombings, right? Based upon what the news are saying and the report coming out, there says foreign nationals. But then the thing is that we still need to really truly prove or establish that these foreign nationals are acting on behalf of the country where they came from, or not internally, you understand me, that they are being, either hired or internally, it is an act in terms of expressing their frustration or whatever it is. Sometimes they are trained persons who maybe from time to time, live with this type of behavior and so many things to really look at. But then, is it that we're going to continue, sit back and relax and just, wait for another one, and then that is the only time we're going to get busy? No, from the first one, we are to. And we should have got our people much more sensitized and educated. But then to a level that the administration choose to engage the people who have the expertise and the knowledge and the information. Because sometimes you may not even want, any type of continue engagement with a particular person. But then if that is a person who can really bring the type of information to give the public awareness and sensitization is important, because I'm saying is that if I test it once, I test it twice, I test it thrice, I can go testing it all the time thereafter.
And I like how you alluded to the point that we need to look at the domestic issue, whether, and that's the next question I'd like you to address. Is it a case where the key persons, as far as the public knowledge on this, is that it was done by foreign nationals, specifically persons from Venezuela? Now, should this be a domestic phenomenon, or should we look at this as a transnational issue, considering the current tensions between Guyana and Venezuela? You understand, some persons might say, oh, this is just the sleeper agents coming in and start, how public curiosity appears. So is it a case where we should view this as a domestic phenomenon, or should we consider that, okay, this may be a transnational criminal network at play? What are your thoughts?
Well, Eden, the thing is this. Remember, as the information unfolds, that it is foreign nationals, but therefore, it not because it's foreign nationals simply means that what they have done is with the intent or with instructions from the country they came from. The evidence must be able to establish that. And once the evidence establishes that, then that is what the public needs to know. But then if the evidence, or there's no information linking that external with the internal act, therefore, we must make it clear to our citizens and other persons in the country, because that what you say now will come to stereotype profiling.
Yep.
Because we're going to look, say, here, oh, Venezuelans, therefore we cannot employ Venezuelans, we can't trust them, we can rent our place to them, and these type of things, right? And which now it's going to come like a Peter pay for Paul principle.
Correct.
And that is bad, because we have persons here from other country, Spanish-speaking country and so on, who are genuine, who are working hard, who are making contribution to the economy. So that type of information needs to be told clearly to the public. So on that aspect, we can know exactly, well, here, this thing has external linkage, but persons were sent directly, and this is it. But if there's no such information, we should make that clear. So that of itself will not really truly affect persons who are here genuinely and contributing and going about peacefully and want to, to do things in the right way.
Correct. And
so that is important.
And I like that point you made in relation to profiling and stereotyping, because that is a concern that I would have shared as well from a legal point of view. When we look back at the 9/11 attacks and the way in which persons from the Islamic faith or from the Islamic countries and the Muslims within the world, how they were treated by international law enforcement coming off of the heels of 9/11 really showed a shift, moving to more discriminatory and a stereotyping nature. You see somebody with a Muslim guard and you pull them in, you want to search them and you want to ask them a lot of questions and that stuff. And we know, and we cannot deny it, that the Spanish persons or the Spanish immigrants or the persons from Latin America, whichever Spanish-speaking country they have come from, but we know there has been an influx in Spanish nationals or Spanish immigrants in Guyana. Considering the societal structure of Guyana, Guyanese, we're very loving people, but in the same breath, we are willing to go the distance for our own persons and, to ensure that our persons are safe. There's that kind of home feeling in Guyana. What really is there in place to ensure that the public confidence and trust in the system is not eroded and taken over with this divisive kind of, oh, we need to treat the Spanish this way, or we need to watch them a little hard, we need to scrutinize them a little bit more, because the reality is, in today's society, you go to any business, you go to any organization, and you cannot escape seeing at least one Spanish or two. I remember, I think a few months ago, I was at this restaurant, and my waitress was she was Spanish. I mean, she was speaking English and thing, but you could clearly hear the accent. And then when you look around, you see a couple more of them. And how do we deal with the persons in the public who may not be exposed to the information that you and I or may have, or they may not understand these situations like that? How do you think the public, as a key stakeholder in policing and ensuring our communities are safe, how do we ensure that members of the public do not get carried away and now begin to throw out their frustrations on these Spanish immigrants, most of whom, or some of whom, are actually contributing to Guyana in a meaningful way? We know that, we have a construction boom, but there's a labor shortage. And now we have these individuals who are now coming in and assisting in our labor force and propelling our labor force. How do we ensure that the wider Guyanese public do not go into this whole stereotyping and profiling, and then there is now more divisiveness in the country, and we move away from unity, whereby we would be willing to accept these immigrants into our countries and into our lives to do whatever the case is. And now we have persons of probably the same background or coming from the same countries now committing these acts. How do the Guyanese people reconcile with this new occurrence?
Well, the thing is this, right? This is Guyana. This is a beautiful country, okay? And despite who the government of the day, it is important that when it comes to national security, is a concern of all, because we don't know what's going to happen when and where we're going to be at that time or the moment, okay? And what is important in terms of really, truly bringing that level of connection and to make people feel comfortable is education. And with the education, in terms of, is going to ensure that you talk to your security forces and everything in terms of, here, this is what we're going to do. This is going to be our approach, and whatever the case might be. But at the same time, when you talk to the security forces in terms of your approach, right, it is important that you sensitize the public in terms of what is expected of them in their approach and what they can do to help you, the police force, in this situation, okay? So you get everybody involved. The next thing too, I think it is important that they have persons who are bilingual, can talk the language, so also that can come out now in terms of the education. Because remember, there are Spanish people here, most of them may not able to speak English, but yet still when they see the police approach them, they may get panic, they may run and all these type of things, and it lead up to other things. So if you can have certain information come out to them through all aspects of the media platform and these things, and let them know, well, look, this is our approach now, okay? You're required to cooperate. The police will conduct searches. When you're going into your workplace, the security will be there, and this is what they will do, and those type of things. And with that of itself will bring an ease, because if I know definitely what the police is doing and the security is doing is in order for my safety, I will truly cooperate. There's no way I'm going to fight up or these type of things. And that of itself going to give you opportunity now to really see persons in terms of what are their true intention and purpose. And then also you will be able to really separate those who really truly coming out there looking for livelihood and want to, be straight with the law as compared to those who have, sinister's agenda. So within the aspect of your education, that of itself can really truly bring about a level of calmness, a level of surety, and a level in terms of whereby persons will be able to see in terms of what is their true intention and purpose. But if we operate in isolation in terms of where the security forces alone know what they're doing and how they're operating, yet still, the public will be out there now wondering, what is it? What happened? How come, And that's where you're going to find out that there's going to be some retaliation or fragmentation because, you just pull up on me just like this and you search me and you think. Because that is one of the things that we need to really, truly step up in terms of our service and the way how we operate and how we conduct ourselves. Because it is a clear fact that the country has opened up. There are a lot of foreigners here now, and they're going to continue to come. But then we must be prepared and ready to deal with them in such a way. One of the things that I can recall, I would have recommended, and as I said, that was just before, I was sent on leave and so on, was to get these posters at the police station in terms of where we would have got the Spanish and the English just below it. So, like, ¿Cómo estás? Means, what is your name? It must be there in English, and those type of things, Buenos dias, good morning, it must be there. So even if the person comes to the station and the police will have to engage, there is the poster right there, and the police can go through you with those basic elementary things and get the requisite type of information while awaiting professional, right? While awaiting professional. Because the thing is this, there might be a foreigner who speaks a different language, and they may have seen something which is very important and critical, and they want to alert the security or the administration, the management for the building or the business, whatever the case may be, what they observe. But because of the language barrier, you understand me, they cannot really bridge that communication. And what happened? Catastrophe. So it is important now that we started to think ahead and find ways and means in terms of how we can create, you understand me, how we can create that bridge and remove the barriers in terms of our communication with these foreign nationals. So as quickly as possible, you understand me? Because it's not only just about social media alone, and also you may have the phone where you can able now to have the translation when the person speak. All those things may take time. But if you have certain writings on the wall, you understand me? Like for instance, I saw a little child, maybe like 7 or 8 years old, go to Chinese supermarket and was able to pronounce the name. Why? Because he sees it every day. So when they have an opportunity to see this type of information, is on the wall, is on the billboard, it is there publicly, steady in your face and in your eyes. After time, you want to grab all of it. You want to get to it. So it is important in terms of stepping up our education. 2, it is important in getting our joint services members ready, alert, and yet still in the approach, they must be professional. You understand me? They must be real professional. And then also, we must able to even have those same foreign nationals able to communicate with us if they see things which they know definitely, or they might be even passing and hear a conversation. You understand me? Where there's some plan which can really truly cause a great issue of national concern, but they want to relate to us, but because of the language barrier and time, time is very, very, very essential, because what the person may want to tell you is just for a few minutes before something happens.
Correct.
But then you say, oh, I don't understand what you're saying.
Mm.
Look, wait until tomorrow when I got somebody who can really, translate what you're saying and things. But the person's telling you, no, you can't wait for tomorrow.
Well, no.
So that is important
Yeah.
in terms of getting to understand Guyana is moving. It is not waiting. And as a result of that, we have to move with it. We have to move with it. You understand me? We just can't look in to see if people are going to be placing bombs at police station, placing bombs at gas station, GPL installation, or supermarkets and so on. We got we have other components and infrastructure that's of great national security. What happened to our hospitals? You understand me? What happened to our waterways? Even our roadways. You understand me? Even bridges that linking us to important places from one region to the next. That taking us across the Demerara Harbour Bridge, the Borbies Harbour Bridge.
I mean, even considering the gas station at Regent and King Street, that posed an issue where they had to. And I mean, I must give the police props. I was very impressed by how they would have treated, at least generally, the management of the crime scene, because that is not something we usually see maintained in Guyana, at least from my experience. That is a big eyesore where you have crimes be committed and the treatment of the crime scene leaves much to be desired, where persons are just allowed to walk through indiscriminately, and you're compromising the integrity of any particular evidence that can be found at the scene. So I am very pleased with how the police would have responded to cordoning off the entire gas station to all the way to Charlotte Street for those few days. And I mean, the public may have been affected. I myself, too, a person's traversing through King Street to Regent Street. There was a big traffic, debacle in that area because they had to now divert traffic through Charlotte Street. So I mean, though it's a balance. But to just pick up off of what you just said, we understand, and I think it's clear how the police should be responding and some of the things that they should be implementing. Now, what about the public? Because I remember it was a few months ago, it was either this year or last year, there was a new, what do you call it? I think it was a sign on the police vehicle where they had Policia, which I would want to believe is Spanish for police. And the public response to it, I mean, Guyanese, we're light-hearted people, is that, many people made a joke off it and say, oh, look, the Spanish take, over, How do the members of public now treat with what you just suggested, making Guyana more friendly to these Spanish nationals or immigrants within our society, whereby now certain things will need to be done in Spanish and in English, just like you said at the police stations. I mean, and we understand that because it is something that we need to do, as you rightfully said, to be able to mitigate and to be able to respond effectively to any criminal elements or things of that nature. But how do the Guyanese people now, some of whom are not too keen or happy about the presence or the extent of the Spanish influx now in Guyana, how are we able to balance now our Guyanese born nationals, right, and those who are now trying to make Guyana a second home? How do we strike that balance without making the Guyanese persons or the Guyanese nationals feel as if they're losing away their country, where, now Spanish is like a normal thing and everybody should, have a little bit of familiarity with it, and you're going and you're seeing Spanish words in restaurants, or you're going to police station and you're seeing Spanish signs and these things. How does the average Guyanese citizen now respond to that, especially those who have already been very closed off to the influx of Spanish in Guyana?
All right. Let me go to the part with the police and the vehicle. Right? I don't think that should have been on the vehicle just as much as other people, because when you enter country, you know the police. You see the police by virtue of the dress and the type of vehicle. You understand me? The type of vehicle, the lights and so on. It is international or universal in terms of there are certain things peculiar about police, right? So not on the vehicle. But now, when it comes to in terms of the aspect of the Guyanese and the large number, the influx of Spanish nationals, but not only Spanish, we have other persons here, you understand?
Definitely.
The thing is this, is that if your parents bring a relative in the home to live or adopt a child, okay, it will bring up feelings, okay? But until they actually explain to you and over a period of time get you to understand the reason for such action, then you become appreciative of it. And then eventually you started to see the importance of that child. And then eventually you accept, and you and the child, grow together, and, and then even later on, even members of the public would not know that's not your biological brother or your sister, but they will know here that's Eden brothers, Eden sisters. So it is the same thing. It's not only in terms of the people or the citizen alone is responsible for making that connection or acceptance. It's the government's responsibility to ensure that the citizen get an understanding in terms of here. This is what usually happens when your country is with such an expansive economy with oil and all these things and so on. You'll find that definitely you will have a huge aspect of immigrants coming, because it happened in Trinidad
Correct.
and other places. Okay? But then how can you get your people to know? You got to be able to connect your people with history, help to show them what happened in other places. You understand me? And then from that, they will get an understanding and adapt. Okay? And then also, within the business community, with all those big business community and everything and so on, they also will be able to bridge that connection too, because let me say, like for instance, like the movie town, Giftland and so on, you cannot have such a massive business and doesn't employ persons who are linguists, who can be able now to relate and interact and communicate. So even from time to time when you will have, your staff meeting, your staff get together and these things and so on, you will be able now to pass that message, help to have your people, understand that, look, this is what is happening, this is what we're facing with, and this is it. The importance of getting people to understand too, you must be able to present evidence. It's not only just talking, but you must be able to present evidence. Look, since we have these people here, this is the progress. Show them the evidence. And that of itself, as you show the evidence, will help our people now to understand. You have said it earlier. When you go to most of these places now, the Chinese supermarket and all the places and so on, you have these Spanish nationals, but no local persons. Even on the road projects, those people who are manning the signs to tell you when to go and when to stop, they're Spanish nationals. Okay? Sometimes I ask the question, why no locals? Why are people not there? Is it that they're refusing to work for the money? Or is it that they're not being reached out to? What is caused our people not to be there? Okay? And this is what the type of information are to really truly come in with the research to show that, look, you've been seeing this, and this is the reason why. And let it wake up our people. to come to an understanding that here, this thing was advertised, but y'all never show up, but this is it. Or y'all have a problem with the wages and these people accept it, whatever it is. But for me, and I know for sure, there are several other persons are speculating. Why is it so? Why is it not so? Because of the lack of information and education out there. Also, in these stores and places, public places and spaces, is important. You have persons there announcing in terms of persons being alert, what you must look for if you see something left on the floor and whatever it is and so on. But if you keep talking only in English and they got Spanish people in there, you think the Spanish person is going to look fit when they don't understand English?
Correct.
So you need to have persons who can relate, as I said, linguists who can speak several languages. By now we should know what are the strong migrant population here. If they're Spanish, Bangladeshi, Pakistani, whoever it is, and so on. So you know exactly in terms of what more you need to focus in terms of your communication. So in doing that, you help to now sensitize and bring that level of education. For the lack of knowledge, the people perish. Okay? So that is important. These are very key, important elementary steps, which doesn't even really, take any kind of, large resources. Because the people of themselves within the business community must see the importance of this and be ready also to make that step. And simple, in terms of Ministry of Tourism and other, government agencies and bodies, they're the one who is responsible to even labor responsible to visit these places and check and to ensure that, look, we hope you have system in place in terms of where these people can be educated, and two, where these people can be of use or importance to you in terms of information sharing and these things and so on. So therefore, you need to have this type of communication system where language barrier can be removed. So come back to the part in terms of where I would have said earlier, in terms of my recommendation while sitting in the police force, in terms of having those type of information up, I see the importance in the police stations, okay? Because a lot of them come and make reports. But many times what happens, they turn away because nobody can entertain the reports. And what happens? They're going to take street justice. Because they come to the police. And if the police would have understood what they're saying there and then, with the police immediate response, the perpetrator could have been arrested. But here it is, they're speaking Spanish or they're speaking a foreign language and the police can't really interact. The police wouldn't respond. So the people say, well, all right, let me take street justice because the system fails me. The system doesn't accommodate me. And then sometimes, then we said now in terms of the street justice, they decide now to set the fire to a particular building because the landlord and them got some problem. And that same fire now decide to burn down a whole block or a whole street. What happens there? And then within the same street, you got business places. You might even got a police station right around the block.
Correct.
You understand? You got a health center. So look at it. And all those things, simple as it look, can lead to the threat or the destruction of national security because the whole area, the whole community will be affected thereafter for the type of services that being destroyed.
And I mean, that is truly insightful, at least for me. Listening to you, I'm able to now put that into my own mind, and I'm now able to probably see a new way of how to look at it. And I'm sure the listeners and the viewers appreciate that. And I'm bringing the conversation down to a close because I know we could sit down and we could chat about this all day. Coming down to a close in the conversation, we know, as I mentioned earlier, that in Guyana, we are now developing at a rapid, fast rate. My main thing I want to get from you is that, do you think that our current security infrastructure, do you think that it is good the way it is right now? to be able to tackle these new problems that we're seeing, considering the increased monies that's going around into the economy, considering the more immigrants that are coming into the country, or our oil boom, and all of these new persons that are now flooding into Guyana? Do you think that over the next 5, 10 years that the security or national security infrastructure needs to be, or the institutions too, do those institutions and does that structure need to change, or does it need to be improved, based on all that we have discussed? Do you think that we can maintain our current structure into the next 5, 10 years, or does it need change?
For me, if it works, don't break it. I cannot say in depth in terms of what the government and the joint services and other public, private, and other stakeholders are really looking at this time, because I'm not privy to it, I'm not part of the engagement, and whatever the case might be. But what I can say is that I know for sure that my time, and even recently, because why I can still place emphasis on this, because the persons who I know left behind are persons who still have a few years to offer. There are lots of persons who trained in the joint services, including the police, in terms of, just as what you say, crime scene management, crime scene management, interviewing, audio recording, several aspects, by the US, by the British, by the Canadians. I was part of those arrangements, and I was part of the person, I was the key persons in terms of seeing, even by the French too. I don't know if those ranks are still in the force. I don't know if those ranks are still placed in the area where they can function and offer the service for the training that they've earned. But it is important that the force, the government, they have a joint arms established or set up in terms of whereby all the key stakeholders from all the relevant government agencies and private bodies be together. Like we have the hinterlands, we have an hinterland committee where they would have met every month with the commissioner of police and the senior command and the commanders, and where we will have discussion in terms of same thing, security arrangement in those hinterland areas and whatever the case might be. I presume it will still happening because there's been a long-standing engagement, right? So I presume that is still going on. I don't know regular or often, but then those are things that they need to look at. And also, they need to ensure that they have that engagement with all the key stakeholders and all the government agencies, because the national security is not only about police and GDF alone. It's about education. It's about health. It's about labor. You understand me? So many people. So in every aspect where those persons must make a contribution continuously, they need to ensure that they have this overarching body set up and be there to see the continuity of it. And that's easy to come together because it has been done for COVID.
Correct.
It has been done for COVID because COVID was indeed because of our national security.
Yep.
Okay? So with this, and then also with the movements of so many migrants, therefore they need to ensure that there's a firm and rigid and long-standing body setup so they can able to really truly be on top and able to manage every aspect of things that really truly can disrupt or interfere with our national security posture, whether by internal or external forces. Because here it is, and I'm so happy that when the police said that they were able to saw the movements of that person with the last incident came into the country, maybe just the said day or just a few hours before, whatever information, they were able to see that. So it simply means that, yes, it is good enough for whatever source they got that information from, and more so, the CCTVs and those things are working. It simply means, well, therefore, they need to get those CCTV more widespread so they can have more coverage. And that of itself can also be a deterrent and start it to, reduce the threat. Reduce the threat. But one of the most important things now to really truly reduce the threat and bring a type of relaxation or some aspect of comfort to the citizen is education. And in the education, I'm saying it must be for all, not only English and only targeting Guyanese. You must target all. Because I'm saying now that those same people, those same foreigners who speaking a different language can be the person who to save the day of me and your life.
Correct.
So it is important that the government and all the other persons and who the key stakeholders need to look at it from the perspective, you understand me, and see the importance of this message that we are bringing here today. Because this is for Guyana. Despite it coming out from APNU team, but this is for Guyana.
Correct.
This is for Guyana.
Correct. Well, Mr. Williams, thank you a lot. And in closing, I'm just going to invite you to charge the Guyanese public in relation to how they can play a role in relation to being vigilant and into manning their own communities and areas in which they live, and basically to allow them or to make them feel more calm so that we don't go into a widespread panic. So I would like you to briefly, look at the camera and talk to the Guyanese population and just give them a bit of encouragement in consideration of all that we've talked about today.
Well, what I want to charge everyone, including Guyanese, foreigners, everyone, what I want to charge you with, remember, safety begins with you first. It is your life. Okay? It is your life. Safety begins with you first. And what I want you to do is always be vigilant, able to detect the unusual from the usual. Okay? You know that when you wake up in the morning, this is what you will always see. And if there's something totally different from what you normally see, it simply means it must bring a concern to you. And that of itself can really, truly help us, okay? In the meantime, while there are other things to come. But look for the unusual thing, even at businesses, businesses, vehicles, whatever it is. Always look for unusual things. Like for instance, somebody come into the vehicle, when they step out, like the conductors, look to see when person step out of the vehicle. And if somebody, left the bag, immediately call them back, say, hello, look, this bag left here but don't see it in terms of the way, like for instance, somebody might say, I'm glad I left the bag because in there might get something for me, and definitely whatever is inside there might totally, end the lives of so many persons. So look for the unusual. And also try as much as possible to learn the language, the foreign language of the persons who you communicate with, who are your neighbors, who are around you. Because we see definitely that there's no specific area now where the Cubans are living, the Venezuelans are living, the Pakistani, they're all over. And once they're in your neighborhood, try as much as possible to interact and learn the language. So that of itself can put you on good standing. And then also, I'm saying that use the social media apps, because there's so many things you can learn from it. AI can do so much for you now.
Correct, yeah.
You understand me? So let me say, for instance, if you get your phone and the person speak, and you can able to see the person translation, and you know exactly what it is. That is your friend now, that's your neighbor. Try as much as possible to learn the language. You understand me? Learn the language. And when you learn the language, it simply means that of itself will help you, because those people make it a duty as possible to learn English very quickly.
Correct.
Because they want to hear what we say. You know? Like you go into the Chinese store, and the cashier and even the owner of the store, they're speaking Mandarin. But you don't know Mandarin, and they can speak very loud.
Correct.
Because they realize that you don't understand.
Yeah.
But then when we speaking, sometimes even we have the view that they already know what we're saying. So sometimes we speak quietly or whisper in each other's ears if we observe or we see something, right? So they must do the same thing when they see us nowhere here. These people are catching on our language. You understand? They're catching on our language. So we have to be very careful in terms of what we're saying, how we speak, and these things. And that of itself can also bring a dent or a reduction. You understand me? There's no perfect system. There's no there's no way totally. But the thing is that we can able to minimize. We can minimize the risk. You understand me? We can minimize the risk. And once we do those things and be ready to observe the usual and the unusual, I think those are the things that's going to help us. And try as much as possible. We want those type of information to get out there and to get our people, ready and protected. And I wish everyone a safe Christmas, because we know we're into that season.
Yep.
And there's a lot of persons out there going to be going to do business and shopping and things. And just as much as our citizens are care or concerned about their security and going about doing what they have to do, I'm asking the government of the day to do the same thing, and also the business owners and those persons to do the same thing. So the comfort must not only come from the people who are going out and fighting for it, but they must actually see it coming from up top too.
Correct.
And that of itself can really truly restore the public confidence, and I think things can come back to the level of normalcy that we were experiencing prior to the bombing at the gas station.
Yep. Well, Mr. Williams, thank you so much once again for an insightful conversation. I'm taking away a lot of things, and I'm sure our viewers and the wider Guyanese population who will be watching this will be taking that away too. I think that your contributions were very timely, and I am personally appreciative, as I'm sure the wider population is. Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, you are in tune to Nation Watch, powered by the People's National Congress Reform. My name is Eden Corbin, and I'm wishing you a great rest of your day. Thank you.